All right, happy Thursday, guys. Today we're going to read The Shadows at Jamestown, chapter 25. Hopefully you read all the other ones before we're on chapter 25. This is the second to last chapter. Okay. Toby bolted toward the glass house as Marcus rounded the bend. He limped heavily, but still carried the metal rod in his hand. The blood from the gash in his head had smeared against his cheek like ugly makeup. Sam barely recognized the scientist he'd met in the lab. "Where's Grace?" Toby yelled, moving toward Marcus. "Get out of my way, Toby!" snarled Marcus as another car pulled to a stop on the road behind them. The professor and Patrick jumped out and ran toward them. "Not a chance," said Toby, straining to look down the path past where Marcus stood. "What have you done with her?" "Marcus!" the professor shouted, hurrying past where Sam, Caitlin, and Derek stood. "What are you doing to these children?" He turned to Patrick next to him. "Call the police." Marcus grimaced as he wiped the blood from his face. "Oh, isn't this precious? The gang is all here, ready to bring me down. Everything in the name of history, right, Doc?" Whatever you've done isn't worth all this, Marcus," the professor answered, walking tentatively forward until he was side by side with Toby. "Oh, no?" said Marcus, leaning up against a tree. "No one is bigger than the project, are they, Doc?" He seemed to be swaying. Sam wondered if he'd hurt himself even more seriously than his bleeding head let on. A flash of metal came from behind, sending Marcus falling forward. He thudded to his knees, then onto the ground in a clump. Sam looked up to see Grace standing where Marcus had been, an iron blow rod in her hand. Marcus lay still on the ground in front of her, knocked unconscious. Wow, that Grace, she's awesome. Okay. "Have a seat," Grace muttered as Toby rushed forward and she collapsed into his arms. "Holy mackerel," shouted Derek. "Grace, are you okay?" said Caitlin, joining Toby by her side. She nodded faintly, attempting a smile. "I don't think I'll be running any races for a while. He whacked my leg. Pretty good, but the rod wasn't hot enough to really do damage." The professor looked over at them in bewilderment. He was really confused. "What in the world has happened here? I got Derek's message and came as quickly as I could, but someone needs to start explaining things." Sam looked over at his brother. "You called him?" Derek nodded. "Quietly, while I was hiding. We couldn't just sit there, you know." Sam was impressed. His brother had saved the day twice in just a few minutes, and he'd saved Grace, too. Sam looked at the professor, hardly knowing where to begin. "We figured out that Marcus is the one who has been sending fake artifacts to the Smithsonian." "I can't believe it," the professor bellowed. "We thought it was Grace at first," added Caitlin. "You thought it was Grace? You thought it was Grace," said Derek defensively. He gave a silly grin to Grace. "I never doubted you." Grace smiled. "Derek, thank you for pushing that shelf over on Marcus to save me. That was very brave." She leaned over and gently kissed his cheek. Whoops. "Thank you." For the first time Sam could remember, Derek was speechless. His entire face turned as red as a tomato. Sam burst out laughing. Grace turned to the professor. "I do have a confession to make, Doc." "Oh?" said the professor. I don't know if I can bear too many more revelations this evening." "I did steal something from Jamestown. Actually, Doc, we stole something," said Toby, squeezing Grace's hand. The professor raised his eyebrows. "Both of you?" "Don't worry, it's not as bad as you think it is." Sam patted the professor on the back reassuringly. "Well, that's a matter of opinion." Derek grumbled. Toby and I took some iron tacks from the dig site, explained Grace. Iron tacks? said the professor. What in the world for? We wanted to melt them down to make rings, said Toby eagerly. Grace and I are getting married. The professor's brow furrowed in confusion, then a wide smile filled his face. Why, that is tremendous news, he exclaimed. How have I not heard about this sooner? We thought it might seem unprofessional, explained Toby. You're not mad? asked Grace. Considering everything that has been going on today, Grace, a little bit of worthless iron is the least of my worries, the professor laughed. Congratulations, guys, said Patrick. Just then, a police car pulled to a stop at the top of the road, and two officers walked cautiously toward the group. Everyone okay here? The first one asked. I think so, officers, said the professor, but this man needs to be taken into custody, and he may need medical attention. Grace explained to the officers what had happened at the glass house and how Marcus had attacked them with the blow rod. He began to stir as the officers walked up. They pulled him to his feet, cuffing his hands behind his back. Sam gave Marcus a worried look. Are you okay? Sam, don't talk to that thud. Don't ask him that, said Derek. Marcus moaned and tried to get his bearings. The professor walked over to him, but only shook his head silently. Don't look at me like that, Doc, Marcus hissed. You know history well enough to know that most things don't have a storybook ending. Sadly, you're right, Marcus, the professor replied. But this could have been avoided. You knew better. All right, let's get down to the station. We can sort this out there, said one of the officers.